Flew to Florida.
What? It was amazing.
Hi there, my name is Dietrich and I'm working with Jared. This is a introduction to the hydraulic system in a skid steer for our mechanical engineering class 1131 video assignment. So first of all, we're going to point out the actuators. Inside of a skid steer there are plenty of them, so we're just going to keep it nice and short by showing the bucket actuator right here. It's a linear piston type. And right here, on both sides, we have two more linear piston actuators. As you can see from the front bucket actuator, we have conduit lines that travel along this arm and will join up in the back of the skid steer. We'll be going to that later on. But for now, we're going to show you the directional control valve, which will be used to deliver pressure to the actuators. So it's a bit hard to see, but right back here, this white unit is the directional control valves. And you can see all the conduits coming off of it. And as I was saying earlier, there are plenty of actuators in the system, both rotary and linear. And so that's how come we have at least 8 different ports on this directional control valve. Now, we're going to show you where the reservoir is. So the reservoir comes off the directional control valve. So right here we have our directional control valve. And we're going to find the travel of the hydraulic fluid back to the reservoir. So from the directional control valve, we go to a pressure control valve, which is right here. From that pressure control valve, we have a single conduit to the reservoir, which is this one right here. Travels right across and up to our reservoir, which is right here. On the reservoir, by the way, we have our breather cap on the top. So from our reservoir, we have our single conduit, which is this line right here, that travels back to our pressure control valve. Now from our pressure control valve, the hydraulic fluid will travel to our pump, our hydraulic pump. This is a vane type pump that will deliver high pressure through this conduit back to our directional control valve, where it will be delivered to our actuators. Now that I've shown you the hydraulic circuit involved with our actuators, I'm going to show the prime mover for our hydraulic pump. So if we travel to the back of the skid steer, passing by our linear actuators, we have an internal combustion engine, which is our prime mover. So in the very back of our engine, there's a shaft that is the output for the prime mover and therefore the input for the hydraulic pump. And while we're back here, I'm just going to point out a couple other hydraulic components. We have a high pressure filter here. We have conduit lines coming off of it. And then as well, just to say, right in here is a heat exchanger. It's an air-cooled heat exchanger that the fan is connected to our engine.
That's all you need to know about skid steer. I'm Dietrich.
Dieter and I are doing a video on a pneumatic compression system. This is the rotary actuator. It's got a directional control valve like right here. You can switch it from forward to back, and a valve to turn it on and off. This is the valve that allows the pressure to come through these conduits to the rotary actuator. By turning it on, you allow the pressure to go through, and you can use it. This is the gauge that shows how much pressure you have in the system. Right now it's sitting right there. And these are the conduit lines that go up, over, and around. So from the valve, we go into here where there's an accumulator with compressed air in a tank. It's like a tank that has compressed air in it pretty much. And we'll go check that out next.
Cool.
Okay, so from the conduit lines, it comes down to the accumulator for compressed air. The accumulator gets its air from this pump right here, which has like 2 pistons in it that compress the air and send it in here. The pump gets its air from up here, which is this is the filter, and the air comes from the atmosphere, which is our reservoir. The prime mover of this system is back here, which is just an electric engine or motor, and it's just belt driven to this pump system here.
And I'm a student at NATE taking hydraulics mechanical components class. And I'm here to show you around an automatic transmission repair shop. It has plenty of systems available that we can learn a lot from, both mechanical and hydraulic. But for example, the hydraulic press. We have as the terminology states, a linear piston actuator that travels downwards and then would press units together. Right here we have a standard pressure gauge, and then we have a conduit running on the backside of this hydraulic press upwards. Right here is a cylinder that is for the pump. And so what happens is that you take your arm and you place it inside one of these sockets, traveling up and down. You're delivering hydraulic fluid from the pump through the conduit to the actuator. Right here we have a return relief valve, so that when we are done our job, we can turn this back and the hydraulic fluid will travel back into the pump. So as I was talking about earlier, the force that you apply will travel to the linear piston actuator, but this is the prime mover. It's a mechanical input where your arm delivers movement to cut. And finally, the reservoir in itself is also the pump. And so the hydraulic fluid, when we are done using the system, will just travel back into this piston. As you can see, our rating is 55 tons heavy-duty press. So special thanks to Low Cost Transmission in Edmonton, Alberta, for allowing us to walk around the shop, get some shots, talk about the equipment that's available, and to help us deliver this presentation,